Hi, I'm Lynn Langett for Prediction Software, and in this short video, I'm going to talk to you a bit about InsightNow. Before we get started, I want to just introduce this idea of prediction software. The philosophy behind prediction software revolves around three core principles, and the first is that predictive analytics should be simpler and more accessible. And the implementation of this is that it's integrated with existing Microsoft tools. In particular, we're going to be looking at an add-in ribbon for Excel. There's also integration with SQL Server, and it's driven by wizards that allow subject matter experts to build powerful and accurate models. The second core principle is that all big data and business intelligence will include predictive analytics. So the core principle we're going to look at in this screencast is integration with spreadsheet data, but be aware there are other data sources available as well. And the predictive intelligence that is part of this product can be used for many different data scenarios and verticals: healthcare, manufacturing, retail. Very, very common scenarios are included in the product. And the third core principle is that enterprises need end-to-end solutions. They may start with a model that's built in Excel, but prediction software includes advanced visualizations that can run in a browser. They also include collaborative abilities, the ability to publish models, and reuse and share models across the enterprise. So to get started, you'll want to go and download the free developer edition using the URL shown on this slide. There are two different ways you can get prediction software. One is cloud-based, the other is on-premise. So let me go through the steps. For cloud-based, you have a very simple setup. Basically, you just install an Excel add-in and it appears as a ribbon, and you'll be connecting to the Prediction Cloud service. For the on-premises version, you'll be integrating with a local SQL Server instance. You need to follow the install instructions, and the on-premise edition does keep all your data on premises. So we're going to get started with the InsightNow demo, and in this slide, I have shown you a screenshot of what the Excel add-in ribbon looks like, and we'll be taking some time going through the different capabilities that are available on this ribbon now. So to get started, what I've done is I've installed the Excel add-in, and I'm working with one of the sample workbooks that's available for customers who try it out. And in this workbook, you have several different tabs. The very first tab has an index which describes the data that's available for the different scenarios. So to get started, we're going to click on the InsightNow button, and then we're going to pin the ribbon open so we can take a look at it. And I'll tour you through the ribbon, and then we'll look at each of the Insight tasks. So the first button is a prediction button that allows you to access help. It allows you to connect to the prediction website, see aspects of your account, and the licensing that you're working with. The middle section here gives you access to the different wizard-driven insights that you can apply to your data. And the third section allows you to work with running tasks and reuse useful scenarios via visual macros. So to get started, we're going to work with Analyze Key Influencers. And to do that, we're going to start with the College Plans dataset. To get there, we're just going to click on the College Plans link. You'll notice that the sample is very well annotated, and although in this screencast I'll go through some of the scenarios, I won't have the time to go through all of them, and I'd encourage you as a first step when you're trying out the product to go through all the scenarios so that you can understand the different capabilities that are built into the product, because there are a lot of them. So this data is a very simple table that has an ID value, it has a gender value, parental income, IQ, and then whether or not a student was encouraged, and whether or not they plan to attend college. As with anything in Excel, you just click somewhere on the table, and then you click on Analyze Key Influencers. This will open a wizard-driven interface, which is written in plain English, and will allow you to quickly get insights and find meaning in your data. So you can see here the idea behind Analyze Key Influencers is it detects the influence of the other columns on the values of the target column. And all of these insights will produce a report inside of Excel that is interactive so that you can understand your data better and then continue to explore it. So what we're going to do here is select the column to analyze for key factors, and we want to know more about whether or not a student plans to go to college. Now, many of these wizards have advanced capabilities, so we could go and click that here, or we could perform advanced text analytics. But as we're getting started, we're just going to do the basic scenario first. Also, the data is selected by default because we've clicked on the table. If we wanted to select a particular subset, we would just click Select Data, and then we could select a particular subset of data. We could also script this if we wanted to run it later, but we're just going to go ahead and run it now. So you can see that the data was sent to the Predixion cloud servers and analyzed, and a report was produced. And in the report, we can see through the rich Excel visualizations that we have the correlation of the different column values to our factor of interest, which is whether or not a student plans to attend college. So we have all of our rich capabilities inside of Excel. We can see that the most closely correlated factor is parental encouragement. So if we wanted to filter out a different factor, or any factor really, we could just go in and we could say filter out parental income, and then let's take a look at the values of the correlation. Now, once we have one or more reports, we're going to have in our workbook, in addition to our data listing, we're going to have an insight index, which is really useful to quickly jump to the different reports that we've generated. So we'll have a log, and we'll have a link directly to that page. Now, for the next insight task, we're going to again use the college plans. So we're going to click on this same data set, and we're going to click on Detect Categories. As you can see, there's all kinds of built-in help written in plain English to make the insights more usable and understandable. Detect Categories groups rows of data into categories based on similarities. Again, when we click the button, a wizard will open, and we can take a look at and select which columns we want to be part of this automatic categorization. Now we can just let the algorithm itself determine how many natural categories occur in the data, or we can specify that we want to look at a certain number of categories. So let's say we want to group this into 4 different categories. As with the previous example, because we've clicked on the Excel table, it automatically selects the table, and if we want to change that, we just click on the Select Data button, and we're going to go ahead and click Run. Now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and say Run in background, and you can see the prediction pane opens, and you can continue working while this is running. And here you can see the status, which is another useful aspect of this product. Now once it's completed, what you can do is you can click on the results, and that will create the report. And I'm going to go ahead and close the pane. Now when you take a look at the report, you can see that 4 categories were detected. Now when you take a look at this, it's set to show you the detailed information for the first category, and the filter is turned on automatically. So the first category, the most correlated factor, is that the students were not encouraged to go to college. Now if we look at a different category, you can see the most correlated factor is low IQ. Now in order to make this more meaningful, what you would commonly want to do is do a rename. And notice once I do this, it's going to rename not only the category here, but the category names down here. So I'm going to say not encouraged, and then I'm going to say low IQ, and let me take a look at that third category. And the highest factor here is plans to attend, but I'm interested in the fact that they were encouraged, and this looks like high IQ. Now once I've got these renamed, I of course can work with my filters and take a look at them here, but there's more to this report. If I scroll down this page, you can see, and again, lots of text description to help you out, category profiles, the distribution of column values in the categories, and you can click on the slicer over here to filter the chart by category and column. So this hasn't yet refreshed because this is a pivot table which is linked to this. So if I click over here, and you can see now that I can look a little bit more granularly at this data that I have labeled. You'll also see that back on the college plans table, we have a new column which is category. So we have a new column of data that was actually added to our original table here. Now for our next insight task, fill from example, we're going to use similar data, but we're going to use not exactly the same data. We're just going to actually, it's linked here, fill from example. And this table has gender, parental income, IQ, parental encouragement, and then we have some of the college plans filled in, but not all of them. So again, a common business scenario where you're missing information. And what fill from example will do is we're going to select the data that we have, and we're going to ask fill from example to provide us with insight about what pattern is in the current data and to suggest values for the missing data. So as with the others, we'll just click on fill from example, and again we have a plain English explanation here, and it has selected the college plans, and we're going to say run. As with previous, we could run in the background, but I'll just let this run. And once again, we'll have a report. Now the report is a pattern report, so it shows what it's favoring, whether or not a student plans to go to college, and what the relative impact is. So in addition to this report, if we go back to this college plan section, you can see, as with the previous insight task, detect categories, fill from example also adds a new column where it suggests the values. So you get two outputs from this insight task, which is the suggested values and a report showing you the pattern that it detected. Now for the next type of insight, we're going to use a different data set, and we need to do that because we're going to look at time series forecasting. And in order to use time series forecasting, we have to have some aspect of time in our source data. So this data set is a fictitious sample of sales of Australian wine. So you can see our time value is a month value. So then we have the total quantity by different types of wine. So white, all others, so on and so forth. So as with previous tasks, we're simply going to click somewhere on the table. We're going to then click forecast, and we're going to say which columns we want to include in our forecast. Now let's say that we weren't interested in other wine or all others. We just were interested in these three values. We also need to specify the number of time units beyond what is known to forecast. We can leave that at 5 or change it. And then we specify whether or not there is a timestamp, and that would be month here. And then finally we select what's called the periodicity of the forecast data, which is, do we want to try to forecast hourly based on this, daily, weekly, or monthly? And let's go ahead and do a monthly. You could of course select a more granular value if you wanted to. And we click run. As with the other insight tasks, we get a report inside of Excel. This one is in the form of a chart. It's a little bit easier to read if I stretch it out a bit. And you can see that the forecast values are here at the end. And just like any other Excel chart, you could do any sort of forecasting. You could, remove the previous values if you wanted a shorter forecast. You could remove certain values here. In addition to the chart, you also get the source data along with the exact forecast values. The next type of insight that we're going to examine is highlight exceptions. To work with this, we're going to use the college plans source data again that we're familiar with now, and we're going to just click on it, and then we're going to click on highlight exceptions. And notice it tells you what it does. Find values that do not match the pattern of your data. Again, we'll accept the default selections and we'll click run. You'll notice that we have a report upon completion. So it shows for the columns the number of exceptions based on a likelihood threshold that you can adjust. And you can see the values there. In addition to that, if we go back to our college plans, you can see the individual highlighted rows that the highlight exceptions insight has called out to us as being out of the typical pattern. The score for the exception, the probable exception cause, and the suggested value. we're going to click on the college plans table and click on the prediction calculator. Now this is a little bit different than some of the tools we've seen so far. So we're going to take a minute to read what it says here. The tool detects the patterns that predict a specific value or a target of a column based on values in other columns. The patterns are presented in a scorecard format that allows the assigning of scores based on the values of the other columns. And it gives you an analytic report of scores which can be used to analyze the impact of misclassification costs. It gives you an operational prediction calculator or a printer-ready sheet. So this one actually is designed to be used either online or printed. So let's say whether or not a student is going to go to college, and we want to know why students do not plan to go to college, because we want to cause more students to go to college. And we'll click Run. And as with the other insights, here is our output, which can be used online or can be printed. So for the last insight task, shopping basket analysis, we're going to take a look at yet another type of data set, and that one would be around movies. So let me take a minute to explain this data set and what type of insight you can expect to get out of the shopping basket analysis. You can see that the data set itself is quite simple. It's a customer ID, a movie, and a price. What shopping basket analysis will produce is groupings of items that were purchased together. And this is commonly used in scenarios like retail to figure out what items are selling well together, what items aren't, and of course allowing the retailers to take appropriate action to improve those results. So to get started, we're just going to click on the table and then click on Shopping Basket Analysis. Now in this case, we're going to say the transaction ID, the item, and the item value. So this is very simple. The transaction ID is the customer, the item is the movie, and the item value is the price. Now rather than just running it, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to actually generate a script. Now what this has generated is what's called a visual macro. So a visual macro is, again, a plain English report that users of InsightNow can use to regenerate useful analyses. So you can see it just takes in English the values from the wizard and puts them into a macro. Also, all macros are available in the My Macros tab. So now I'm going to go ahead and run this. I'm going to run it in the background, and you'll see that My Tasks is now available, which is another way for you to access this prediction pane. And now the algorithm has completed, and I can see that by looking here. You can see I could generate a visual macro from here. I could also do something called publish, which we'll come back to in just a second, or I can look at the results. And again, I'm going to hide the prediction pane, and you can see that this result report shows me which items were sold together. And what a big surprise. All the Star Wars nerds love Star Wars. Kidding aside, you can see what movies were rented or sold together and make the appropriate business decisions based on that. Now, bringing back the My Tasks, just to close out here, I mentioned that you can publish. And in the introduction, I talked about collaboration. So in addition to saving the work as a visual macro, which is editable, and to change that, you would just go back and change any value on that sheet and then rerun it, you can also publish. And you can publish the results out to what's called a collection. Put a note in here. You can say, this is my movie bundle set. Notice as well you can script this and say OK. And you can see the publish is successful. Now that you've seen all that Prediction InsightNow has to offer, you'll probably want to give it a try yourself. So I'll remind you to do that. You should just go to the URL that's listed here and download the free developer edition. If you want to contact Prediction Software, here's the contact information. Thanks for listening.